explanation um, of the pasuk of the psukim. But obviously, the Torah has layers of understanding and meaning and interpretation beyond just the simple layer. And so, in this year, I always like to go a little bit beyond the simple layer and sort of decipher some of the Torah's messages that are underneath that first superficial layer. And I think there's a theme through that, or a message that runs through Noach and Lech Lecha. I mean, this is really sort of Parshas is the beginning of creation, the whole story of creation, and then really Noach and Lech Lecha is God's commandment to mankind. And we've spoken about the differences between Noach and Avram Avinu, because that's really Noach and Lech Lecha is the story of Noach and Avram Avinu and the juxtaposition of them, and why Noach wasn't the first Jew. And I gave a whole shiur on that, the Kedushas Levi. That's a beautiful shiur in and of itself, and I don't want to get into that now. But I think there's another sort of underlying theme that runs through, that connects messaging, that connects through these parshios. I mean, in general, when we're talking about Sefer Bereshis, the first mitzvah for Klal Yisrael doesn't begin until Sefer Shmos, until Parshas Boy, Achedesh Lechem, the calendar. That's the very first mitzvah. The whole, not just Parsha, the whole Sefer Bereshis. There's no mitzvahs there that are part of our 613 mitzvahs. I mean, the mitzvah of Milah, Avraham Avinu was given, but that comes from Har Sinai as well. It was repeated at Har Sinai. So why do we even have Sefer Bereshis? Like, why is that even a part of Torah if the mitzvahs aren't there? And clearly, obviously, there's there in every one of these parshias and in every one of these stories. This isn't just Sefer Bereshis. It's not just a history of how we became Klal Yisrael, because if it's history, it's missing huge chunks and hundreds, if not thousands, of years in some places. But it's obviously every one of these stories in Sefer Bereshis are laden and loaded with messaging and lessons and life lessons that are almost like this is the foundation of Torah and mitzvahs. Like, before we can even have the very first mitzvah, we have to learn the lessons of Sefer Bereshis. And really, it's when the Siva Shalom asks this question, and he says it's the whole Sefer Bereshis is about midos, about learning midos from our avos and our imois, the qualities and the attributes that we are meant to have, and that's the foundation. You notice that from the 613 mitzvahs, none of them talk about midos, about being kind, or being generous, or being sensitive. All of these midos tevos, are not from the 613 mitzvahs. But why not? We know midos tevos are so important. And the Siva Shalom says this is the entire Sefer Bereshis. It's teaching us that it comes even before the mitzvahs. That you can't even begin mitzvah number one until you have the midos, until you're imbued with the midos tevos, with the positive attributes, with the qualities, with the lessons of life that we learn in Sefer Bereshis. So that's sort of the lenses through which we have to look at Sefer Bereshis. It's not just the history of Klal Yisrael, but this is Hashem telling us these are foundational. These lessons throughout this Sefer are foundational to all of the Torah mitzvahs that will come afterwards. Okay. So let's start with Lech Lecha, and then we're going to jump back to Noach, and then we'll come back to Lech Lecha. So let's begin with Lech Lecha, this week's Parsha. So Hashem speaks to Avram Avinu, and this is the first time we see that there's communication between Hashem and Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu is 75 years old at this point. Just when people are thinking about retiring, Avram Avinu is starting a whole new life at 75. And which is by the way a lesson in and of itself, that there's no retiring from Torah and mitzvahs. Avram Avinu begins his mission that literally transformed the world, and he starts it at 75 years old. So there's a lesson in there, besides all the other lessons, that no matter how old we are, we're never too old to fulfill our mission, to fulfill our purpose, and that actually does connect very much with the theme of this week's shiur. So Hashem tells him to Lech Lecha ma'aretzecha molaretzecha mebeis avicha. Hashem sends him on a journey, and Hashem tells Avram Avinu to leave your land, Haran, which is where he's at, And Lech lecha ma'artzecha moladecha beis avicha. Leave your land, leave your birthplace, leave your parents' home, and go to the land that I will show you. And with that commandment, Hashem sends Avram Avinu on what will become the ultimate mission of Avram Avinu's life, to found Judaism, to be the founder of God-based ethics, of ethical monotheism, and spreading that to the world. Now, obviously, every word of Torah, every letter of Torah is exacting. And as I mentioned, is every letter, every word, every extra phrase is laden with meaning. So clearly, this message to Avram Avinu is not just to leave from the physical place of Haran to go to the land that I will show you. Because if that were the case, Hashem would have worded it differently. The phrase, it's worded very awkwardly. Lech lecha ma'artzecha moladecha beis avicha. When Hashem, for example, when Hashem wanted Noach to leave the table, to leave the ark, it was time to leave this place and go to that place. Hashem told him, say mina teva, leave the table, go out from the table. So if Hashem was just telling Avram Avinu to leave the physical place of Haran, the more clear and the more non-awkward way of saying that would have been, say, V'charan el haaretz asher areka, or say, from wherever he's at, el haaretz asher areka. Go, leave where you are and go to the land that I will show you. Yeah. That's another thing. That's part of Avram Avinu's test, that Avram Avinu is being told where to go. So Hashem doesn't tell him where to go. But I'm just saying, even the grammar, the lech lecha, would have been just say, leave this place. Like Hashem told him, say mina teva. So it would have been say mina Haran. Go out from Haran. So clearly Hashem is giving him more than just a command to physically leave this place and go to that place. I mean, that's part of the command. But there's much more meaning in that commandment as well. And we see it from the very first words, lech lecha, which literally means go to yourself. That means it makes no sense at all. Lech lecha, go to yourself. In fact, it makes no sense that Rashi has to translate it as saying lecha means not go to yourself, but in fact, go on behalf of yourself. That this journey that I'm sending you on, even though you have no idea where I'm sending you, and I'm sending you on a journey into no man's land, but nevertheless, it's lecha. Rashi says it's l'trevascha, it's l'hanascha. You're going to benefit from this journey. That's how Rashi translates the lecha. But even that is why does Avram Avinu need to feel benefit from the journey in order to go? Avram Avinu loves Hashem. Hashem's telling him to go. Avram Avinu will go even if he doesn't have physical benefit from it. So why does Hashem need to tell him you'll have physical benefit from it? Avram Avinu loves Hashem. He'll listen to the commandment of Hashem. Hashem doesn't need to tell him he'll have physical benefit. He'll gain wealth from it, etc. He'll gain fame from it, as Rashi says later on. How do we even understand that? But also, even just the language of that verse, Lech lecha ma'artzecha ma'moladetecha mebeis avicha. Once you go out of Artzecha, you automatically go out. Once you go out of your land, you automatically go out of your birthplace and your parents' home. So all it has to say is Lech lecha ma'artzecha el eretz asher areka. Why does it add Artzecha, Moladetecha, mibeis avicha? It's superfluous. Also, my final question here is, it's written in reverse order, because if you're actually leaving physically, the order in which you leave is you leave your home, then you leave your birthplace, then eventually you leave your land, right? So it should say, but the Torah writes it in reverse order. Go out of your land, go out of your birthplace, go out of your home. It doesn't make any sense. It would be the other way around. So obviously, all of these questions, and these are the lenses which we look at Torah. These questions are so obvious, they almost scream out, darshani. So obviously there's meaning and reasoning and messaging, most importantly, behind the phrases that Hashem utilizes with Avraham Avinu. Specifically, this is obviously Hashem's first communication with the very first Jew. Clearly, there's a message here, not simply for Avraham Avinu, the fact that it's included in Torah, there's a message here for every one of us. So what exactly is that message? What message is Hashem giving Avraham Avinu? On the simple level, he's telling him, move from place A to place B. Move from Haran to the land that I will show you. But again, if that were all Hashem's telling him, it would have been worded differently. Okay. So let's go back now, because I think the answer lies with an understanding that begins in Parshas Noach. Parshas Noach, Hashem sees when before Hashem decides to destroy the world with the Mabul, Hashem sees that the world is corrupted. And the pasuk says, "V'yar Elokim es haaretz v'hinei nishchatza," that Hashem sees the land, Hashem sees the world, and it's corrupted. And the pasuk ends, why? Ki hishchis kol basar es darkei al haaretz, because all flesh has corrupted their ways. But again, that whole second phrase, Hashem sees the land is corrupted because everybody is corrupt. It seems like superfluous. What is ki hishchis kol basar es darkei? Because every flesh has corrupted their ways. It just told us the land is corrupt. So that seemingly would be obvious. So what is that second phrase coming to teach us in Parshas Noach? Ki hishchis kol basar es darkei. And the other question of Parshas Noach is that Rashi brings from the Medrash that the whole Gzar Din of destroying the world was sealed because of Gezel, because they would steal from one another. Now, obviously, stealing is an egregious sin, but why specifically from all of the sins that they were engaged in, from the selfishness that everybody was engaged in that generation? Why the sin of Gezel? Why was that ultimately what was the sort of straw, the makabapatis, the straw that broke the camel's back was Gezel? Why Gezel? So let's go back to that phrase, ki hishchis kol basar es darkei, because I think the answer is there, and it's specifically in the word darkei. Ki hishchis kol basar es darkei. Doesn't say every man was corrupt. Every man was corrupted their derech. What does that mean? Well, Shlomo HaMelech says in Mishlei, when speaking about education, educating a child, chanach lanar al pi darkei, educate the child according to his way. And what is Shlomo HaMelech saying? Shlomo HaMelech is saying something that now today modern educators are very familiar with. But for thousands of years, it wasn't necessarily such an important part of education. And that is that every child learns differently. This is what Shlomo HaMelech is saying. Chanach lanai al pi darkei. Every child has different modalities in which they learn best. Some children learn through hearing things. Some children learn through visualizing things. Some children learn through project-based learning. Some children learn through play-based learning, etc. Every child, and ultimately every human being, has their unique way of learning, of understanding. So Shlomo HaMelech says, "Chanach lanai al pi darkei." Darkei means their unique circumstances, their unique method of learning. That's how you should educate the child. But the truth is, darkei, derech here, Shlomo HaMelech is showing us, it means more than just referring to education and more than just a child. Every individual person, every human being has their derech, has their path, has their journey, has their meaning, has their purpose in life. The fact that your neshama was brought to the world, your soul was brought to the world in a certain time in history, in a certain place in the universe, amongst various certain circumstances. This is because your soul, it's not happenstance, it's not coincidental. It's because your soul has a specific mission and journey and derech that is unique to you. We all are on the journey of Torah and mitzvahs. We all have that general mission and but in addition to that, every one of us has our own unique purpose and our own unique mission and our own unique shlichus in life that is unique and specific to us. And that's our derech. That's our darkei, so to speak. That's our derech. This is And perhaps this is why we read Noach and Lech Lecha always in Chedesh Cheshvan, in the beginning of Cheshvan. I'm going to share something on screen in a moment. There's and seemingly this is going to be a tangent, but it's not. It's all going to come back together. Let me just share the screen for a second. I want to share the screen I want to go to a verse in Sefer Malachim. And this is, if you want to look this up afterwards, this is in Malachim Aleph, Perek Vav, Pasuk 38. The last pasuk here on the screen, if you're following along. So the pasuk talks about Shlomo HaMelech completing the first Beis HaMikdash. And it gives us the date that the first Beis HaMikdash was completed. And the pasuk says as follows. This is in Sefer Malachim, Perek Vav, Pasuk Lamed Ches. The pasuk says, V'shana achas esrei, in the 11th year of building the Beis HaMikdash, it took 11 years. B'yerech Bul, in the month of Bul, Beis Vav Lamed, which has no translation. In fact, in the English, it says, you see on the screen, it says in the 11th year, in the month of Bul, because there is no English translation. So it's a bizarre word. Hu Chedesh Hashmini, what is the month of Bul? So the Torah defines, what is the month of Bul? Hu Chedesh Hashmini, it's Cheshvan, it's the 8th month, right? Tishrei is Chedesh Hashvi, the 7th month from Nisan, and Chedesh Hashmini is Cheshvan. So Cheshvan, and so Kol HaBayis, the Kol Devarim, Kol Mishpatim. So this is when the first Beis HaMikdash was finished. The Chedesh Cheshvan in the 11th year after Shlomo Melech began building it. But my question is, what's Yerech Bul, Beis Vav Lamed? Why does the Sefer Malachim refer to Chedesh Cheshvan as Chedesh Bul? So one answer I saw, which doesn't really answer it, but it's interesting, that the very first letter in the Torah is what? Beis. Beis. And what's the last letter in the Torah? Le'enei Kol Yisrael. Lamed, right? Lamed. Which, by the way, Beis Lamed is Lev, heart. The whole Torah is how we treat each other, what's in our hearts, etc. Okay. What's the middle letter of the Torah? If you count the Torah by letters, it's a Vav. In the word Gachon, in Parshas Shmini. See, this is why I love this class, because you're a bunch of Talmidei Chachamim. Like, most people don't know that. But the middle letter of the Torah, in fact, if you look in your Chumashim and say in Parshas Shmini, the word Gachon is bolded, and there's a little star there over that Vav in Gachon, which means snake, and talks about the Mychalosaurus, the things that we cannot eat. And Gachon, the snake that crawls on its belly, that Vav in Gachon is the middle letter of the Torah. So Chodesh Bul, Beis, is first letter of the Torah, middle of the Torah, end of the Torah, last letter of the Torah. But still, why is that Chedesh Cheshvan? So there's something else that Beis, Vav, and Lamed are. Beis, Vav, and Lamed are also prefixes. Every one of them is a prefix, right? Beis, if you put a Beis in front of the word, it means in, right? To go in something. If I want to go in my house, bias. If I put a Vav in front of the word, it means and, right? If I want to add, I put a Vav there, it means and, it's conjunction and. And Lamed means to. If I want to go to something, I put a lamed in front of the word. I saw a beautiful interpretation. Chedesh Bul, a Yerech Bul, the reason why the Torah refers to Cheshvan as the month of Bul is because an entire Tishrei we spend in this sort of spiritual oasis with Hashem. We're doing Tshuva Me'ira on Rosh Hashanah Kippur. We're doing Tshuva Me'ava, the joy of Sukkot Simchas Torah. It's an oasis. It's an island of spirituality. It's sort of a time when we could reinvigorate our own Ovedus Hashem, and that's what we're supposed to be doing in Chodesh Tishrei, reevaluate ourselves, and spend real spiritual time understanding who I am and what my mission is in the world, what my unique strengths are, what my talents are, and how I am meant to affect the world. That's my mindset coming out of Chodesh Tishrei. So in Chodesh Cheshvan, now after I spent that month contemplating and really in that spiritual oasis, Chodesh Cheshvan is now when I really have to go to work. Right? We leave all the light and all the Yamim Tevim of Tishrei, and all of a sudden the days start getting darker earlier. It starts getting colder. There's no Yamim Tevim, Chodesh Cheshvan. We go literally from the light to the darkness, and it's our job now to transform that darkness, to turn Cheshvan, take the light of Tishrei, and bring it into Cheshvan, bring it into the world. So Bul means actually it's a message. It's Yerech Bul because this is a message. In the month of Cheshvan, I meant to go bathe inside myself, look inside myself and see where are my talents, where are my abilities, where are my strengths, what is my mission in the world. And then I meant to act upon that. With action upon action, I meant to add to my actions that I did in the previous year. That's the Vav. I meant to look inside as the base. I meant to figure out what my mission is in the world. Then I meant to add to that those actions in fulfilling my mission. And when I do that, when I look inside and I add to my actions in fulfilling my mission, Lamed, I reach my goal, my mission in creation, my purpose of why I'm being here. That's what's alluded to in Yerech Bul. Chedesh Cheshvan is really when we have to begin reinvigorating and re-strengthening and imbuing within ourselves the strength to fulfill my individual mission. Every one of us should be focusing, why am I here? What is my life for? I'm not just here to live selfishly, to accumulate comfort so that I can live, eat, sleep, die. Every one of us has a reason for being. Every one of us has a mission. And we can't just sleepwalk through life. We have to think about what is our mission? Why am I here? How is my life making a difference in the world? How is my life making a difference in the people around me? And the way that I do that is Beis Vav Lamed. Look inside myself, add to those actions that are part of my mission, and through that I reach my goal. That's the Beis Vav Lamed. And this is what the pasuk is saying. Why, when Hashem decided to destroy the world, Hashem decided to destroy the world not simply because they were corrupt, but as the Torah says, ki hishchis kol basar es darkoi. Hishchis doesn't only mean corrupt; it comes from baltashchis, which means to waste. When all of humanity is taking the abilities and the strengths and the gifts that I gave them to fulfill their mission, and ki hishchis kol basar es darkoi, they're wasting it. They're utilizing everything that I gave them selfishly, not to change the world, not to make a difference in the world, not to make a difference in others' lives, but to live selfishly. Then they're hishkis as darkoi. They're perverting, they're corrupting, they're wasting their derech, their mission, their journey, their whole purpose. And this is the point of the story of the Mabul, that the existence of the world depends upon us fulfilling our mission. Now, Hashem promises there's not going to be another Mabul. Hashem's not going to destroy the world. But the message is clear that the entire world's existence depends upon us fulfilling our mission. And when we don't fulfill our mission, we've wasted our whole derech, our mission, our purpose, our journey has been wasted on selfishness. And perhaps this is the gezel. That was the Gzar Din. That was the Makah Patish. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. It wasn't just simply stealing from each other, which that's a simple pshat. We have to understand the simple pshat. The simple pshat is true. But it's deeper than that. When Hashem gives us gifts and abilities and talents to be utilized and to make a difference in the lives of others, to be utilized in fulfilling our mission, and we take those gifts and talents and abilities and we only utilize them for our own selfish purposes, we're stealing from Hashem. That's the gezel. That's the gezel that the world was destroyed over. Because when we're not fulfilling our mission, the world has no reason to be. And that's why Parshas Noach is always read in Yerech Bul. This is the message of Yerech Bul. There's another prefix as well. That if I'm going from something, if I'm abrogating something, I'm leaving something behind. If I'm leaving my house, I put a mem in front of it, right? And I'm going from that. What happens when I put a mem in front of Bul? Bul is fulfilling my mission. What happens when I don't fulfill my mission? When I leave, when I journey from fulfilling my mission, I put a mem. Mabul. That's the Mabul. The Mabul was brought about because because we weren't fulfilling our mission. The whole entire world began living selfishly and was not fulfilling the mission and why the world was created. Hence, Hashem destroyed the world with what? A Mabul. This is the message in Parshas Noach. And so the whole message is that the world depends upon us. And now, with that understanding, we go to the message of Lech. So now Noach teaches us, the Parsha of Noach teaches us that the entire world depends upon us fulfilling our mission. And now Hashem tells Avraham Avinu, how do we fulfill that mission? What is step number one in fulfilling it's more than step number one, steps number 1, 2, and 3. So this is the message to Avraham Avinu and ultimately the message to us, that part of fulfilling your mission in transforming the world, where does that begin? That begins with transforming ourselves. That begins with refining ourselves. That every one of us was given an internal battle as well. Besides the external battles that we all have to battle in the world and our external challenges, every one of us was given internal challenges. And part of our changing the world and refining the world is changing and bettering and refining ourselves. We're not meant to be the same immature person I was at 15, that I am at 20, that I am at 35, that I am at 45. We're meant to grow, refine, change, better, become better human beings. That is a real battle to become a better human being, because the path of least resistance is just live according to my nature. And this is exactly what Hashem is telling Avraham Avinu. Lech lecha. The lecha is not simply, Rashi says, it's going to be for your benefit. Rashi doesn't mean physical benefit. The lecha is, I am giving you the instructions on how to achieve your purpose. The lecha is your purpose, your mission, your mission statement, your reason for being, your unique purpose in the world. Lech, you're going on a journey, not just leaving Haran. It's so much deeper than that. Physically leaving Haran is one part of the commandment, but Hashem's giving him the commandment to go on a spiritual journey as well, to transform yourself, Avraham Avinu. And by doing so, you will ultimately transform the world. And how do you transform yourself? How do you lech lecha? How do you reach your purpose, your mission, your unique shlichus in the world? So the first step in that is lech lecha ma'artzecha ma'moladetecha u'mebeis avicha. And artzecha, moladetecha, u'mebeis avicha is not just, are the three different areas that can possibly influence us negatively, have a negative influence on our midos, on our attributes, on our personality. There's a reason why it goes in this order. Number one is artzecha. We're very influenced by the environment around us, by the environment, by what we see, by what we hear. We all understand the influence of the outside environment. And so lech lecha ma'artzecha, Hashem is telling Avraham Avinu, you have to live in the world. You can't run away from the world, but you cannot let the world influence you negatively. And this was Avraham Avinu. He lived in a pagan world, in a world filled with violence, idolatry, licentiousness, in a world filled with immorality. And Hashem is telling him, if you are going to fulfill your mission, you have to lech me'artzecha. You have to leave all of the negative influences that surround you in society. You have to leave those behind and not be influenced by them. Rise above them. And this is a challenge for all of us. We're influenced by what we see. We're influenced by what we hear. And that seeps into our psyches. And it absolutely influences our behavior. And so step one is, and this is the easiest step. That's why artzecha comes first. This is the easier. You know what's harder than that? Is memoladetecha. Rise above the negative attributes that you were born with. The negative parts of your nature. Now, unless you are a tzaddik, every one of us was born with good attributes and with negative attributes. And some of us have leanings towards anger. Some of us have leanings towards jealousy. Some of us towards gossip. Whatever negative inclinations we have intrinsically, we all have them. And rising above our nature, that is a real battle. That is really hard, because our nature is that's our dominant force within us. So to not only rise above the negative influences of society in order to fulfill my mission, but I have to actually transform myself inwardly as well and rise above. Let's say if I deal with anger issues, or I deal with taiva issues, or whatever they are, it's not acceptable to say, well, this is just my nature. This is how Hashem created me. That's the easy path out, to say that's how Hashem created me. Yes, it is how Hashem created you, to overcome that, to battle that. But that's a harder battle. And then there's an even harder battle, and that is to rise above the behaviors that we witness at home, that we see at home, the negative behaviors that we see at home sometimes from our parents. And sometimes we get stuck in these generational cycles of dysfunction. I once had he wasn't Jewish, but it was so. He was a worker who worked in the Chabad house with me, and this was not in my Chabad house here when I was in Florida. And he told me he was an alcoholic. He was an Irish alcoholic, the classic stereotype. And he told me, I can't help it. My grandfather was an alcoholic. My father was an alcoholic, and I'm an. This is in my genes, and there is reality to that, because when there's family dysfunction, one of the hardest things for people to do, even when they see the family dysfunction, even when they know that dysfunction is there, is not to then again repeat that same cycle. And many of us find ourselves repeating things that our mothers would say, that our fathers would say when we're mothers, and we swore when we were kids we would never do that. And even if it's not positive, but it's hard to break out of the cycle of what we see and witness from our parents, because that enters into our brains and into our minds in a very deep way from a very early age. It's one of the hardest things to overcome. But this is what Hashem is telling Avram Avinu, and by extension, every single one of us. And that's why it goes in order of Artzecha, Moladcha, Beis Avicha. It goes from easy to hard. It's easier to rid myself or to elevate myself above the societal influence. It's a little bit harder, or a lot harder, to rise above my own nature. It's even more hard to rise above to break that family cycle of dysfunction or negative behavior that I witnessed by my parents or perhaps my grandparents or whatever it is. But the message is clear that if we are going to fulfill our mission in the world, if we're going to fulfill our purpose, if we're going to realize the reason why I am here, step number one is transforming yourself. And these are the 3 steps to rise above the negativity of Artzecha, Momoladetecha, and Mebeis Avicha. And when I can do that, when I've elevated and refined myself, as I heard, and I've repeated this before from Yisrael Salanter, some say it's from the Tzanzer Rebbe. I don't know who said it, but it's so powerful. And I heard it in the name of Yisrael Salanter initially, and I've repeated it here in this year many times. He wanted to change the world. I'm not going to say the whole thing. He wanted to change the world. He got older. He realized I can't change the world. I can change my little town. I can't change that. I could change my family. He realized I got older. He got older. I can't change that. The only thing he realized I could change, the only thing I could actually change and I have control over is to change myself. But he says, once I changed myself, I realized that had an effect on my family. When that, in fact, had an effect on my family, it ultimately had an effect on the world. Step number one in fulfilling our mission is transforming ourselves, is refining ourselves. And so this is sort of the overview of Noach and Lech Lecha. Hashem is giving us a message. Number one, in Parshas Noach, the entire world is on a trajectory to a certain goal, and that is the coming of Mashiach. Every one of us were put here to bring the world one step closer. But the only, and nobody else can fulfill what you can actually do to bring this world one step closer. You can say, you know what am I? I'm a single Jew in Teaneck, New Jersey. I'm going to sit this one out and let everybody else take over. Who cares if I don't do my mission? There's millions and millions of Jews. They could all do their mission. I'm not even talking about every day of our lives, including the election. And nobody else. But you know what? It's a good muscle. Just like only you can vote, and no one else can vote for you. You're the only one that can add your vote. It's the same thing with the world. Every one of us, each one of us has our unique contribution. And when we waste away the abilities, the talents, the strength that Hashem gave us, and we're just living our life selfishly, we're hishchis kol basar. We're stealing from what Hashem gave us to transform the world and transform the lives of others. And when that happens, the whole world has no reason for being. The entire existence of the world depends upon every one of us. Then we go to Lech Lecha, where Hashem tells Avram Avinu, step number one in doing this, step number one in fulfilling this is yes, it's important to go out and inspire people and change the world and make sure your life has an effect on others. But you cannot do that successfully and effectively unless you begin at home, unless you begin with yourself. And that's why it's Lech Lecha. This is not just a physical journey of say Mecharon. This is a spiritual journey of Lecha, of journeying to your essence, your purpose, your reason for being. And the only way that you could succeed in this journey is to go ma'artzecha, mamaladecha, the base of Icha, to transform that negativity within you, to elevate yourself beyond the influence of the society around you, beyond transforming your nature, which transforming your nature is such a battle. And it's such a battle that so many don't do it. We just, okay, this is how I was created. That's not sufficient. And the base of Icha, the negative behaviors you saw at home. And there's two kinds of kids who see negative behaviors at home: those who end up repeating that cycle, and those who break that cycle. And be the breaker of that cycle, Hashem is telling Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu saw paganism at home, saw idolatry at home. Hashem tells him, break that cycle. And that's how you fulfill your mission. And that's the underlying message of Noach and Lech Lecha, and why it's always in the Chodesh Cheshvan, and why the elections are always in this time as well. Noach and Lech Lecha and the Cheshvan, it all fits together. Thank you, Mirav, for adding to the Shiur. It all fits together as one. Only you can do it. So Amir Hashem, every one of us will live our mission. We'll take the message of Yerech Bul and not create a Mabul in our own lives, but in fact, to dig deep within ourselves, to add to our actions of fulfilling the purpose and ultimately reaching our goal and fulfilling the message that Hashem gave us in Noach and Lech Lecha and Cheshvan. And just as Avram Avinu, as we see now from hindsight, Avram Avinu did in fact transform himself and ultimately change the world. And here we are thousands and thousands of years later from Avraham Avinu, and all of us are still talking about him. All of us are still affected by him. All the three major religions of the world ultimately came from him. This is the message. When we transform ourselves, we can transform the world and fulfill our mission in being. And Amir Hashem, every one of us should do that. Hashem should see we're fulfilling our mission. We're working, we are reinvigorating ourselves to fulfill our reason for being. So instead of bringing a model, Hashem will do the exact opposite and bring us all what we all need, what Klal Yisrael needs, what the entire world needs. Mashiach Tzidkeinu b'meiru yimenu. Amen. Okay, let's just do a Tehillim, and then we will. Thank you, everybody, for joining me again. We do Tehillim 121. We do, yeah, that's what we usually do. So let's do it together for Klal Yisrael, for Eretz Yisrael, for our IDFs, for our hostages, for the election, whichever way you desire it to go. Okay. Shir Lamaloi Seseinai Harimi Ayin Yavoy Ezri Mi Marinai Se Shemayim Bioretz Ayitin Lemay Raglach Ayanim Shemrecha Hine Lianim Leishan Shemi Yisrael Adinoi Shemrecha Netzilcha Yadiminecha Yem Hashemesh Leikacha V'Yareach B'Laila Adonai Yishmarcha Mikara Yishmeretz Nafshecha Adonai Yishmeretz Escha V'Yacha Mi'ata V'Yadai. Okay, we'll see everybody next week, Amir Tzashem, and we will continue our 15th year of Parshas Shiur. Thank you so much, everybody. 15th year.